the night adventure of Diomed and Ulysses. Upon the refusal of Achilles to return to the army, the distress of Agamemnon is described in the most lively manner. He takes no rest that night, but passes through the camp, awaking the leaders and contriving all possible methods for the public safety. Menelaus, Nestor, Ulysses, and Diomed are employed in raising the rest of the captains. They call a council of war and determine to send scouts into the enemy's camp to learn their posture and discover their intentions. Diomed undertakes this hazardous enterprise and makes choice of Ulysses for his companion. In their passage, they surprise Dolon, whom Hector had sent on a like design to the camp of the Grecians. From him, they are informed of the situation of the Trojan and auxiliary forces, and particularly of Rhesus, and the Thracians who were lately arrived. They pass on with success, kill Rhesus with several of his officers, and seize the famous horses of that prince, with which they return in triumph to the camp. The same night continues, the scene lies in the two camps. All night the chiefs before their vessels lay, and lost in sleep the labors of the day, all but the king. With various thoughts oppressed, his country's cares lay rolling in his breast. As when by lightnings Jove's ethereal power foretells the rattling hail, or weighty shower, or sends soft snows to whiten all the shore, or bids the brazen throat of war to roar, by fits one flash succeeds as one expires, and heaven flames thick with momentary fires, so bursting frequent from Atrides' breast, sighs following sighs his inward fears confessed. Now o'er the fields, dejected, he surveys from thousand Trojan fires the mounting blaze, hears in the passing wind their music blow, and marks distinct the voices of the foe. Now looking backwards to the fleet and coast, anxious he sorrows for the endangered host. He rends his hair in sacrifice to Jove, and sues to him that ever lives above, inly he groans, while glory and despair divide his heart and wage a double war. 1,000 cares his laboring breast revolves, to seek sage Nestor now the chief resolves, with him, in wholesome counsels, to debate what yet remains to save the afflicted state. He rose, and first he cast his mantle round, next on his feet the shining sandals bound. A lion's yellow spoils his back concealed, his warlike hand a pointed javelin held. Meanwhile his brother, pressed with equal woes, alike denied the gifts of soft repose, laments for Greece, that in his cause before so much had suffered and must suffer more. A leopard's spotted hide his shoulders spread, a brazen helmet glittered on his head. Thus, with a javelin in his hand, he went to wake Atrides in the royal tent. Already waked, Atrides he descried, his armor buckling at his vessel's side. Joyful they met, the Spartan thus begun, "Why puts my brother his bright armor on? Sends he some spy, amidst these silent hours, to try yon camp and watch the Trojan powers? But say, what hero shall sustain that task? Such bold exploits uncommon courage ask, guideless, alone, through night's dark shade to go, and midst a hostile camp explore the foe." To whom the king, "In such distress we stand, no vulgar counsel our affairs demand. Greece to preserve is now no easy part, but asks high wisdom, deep design, and art. For Jove, averse, our humble prayer denies, and bows his head to Hector's sacrifice. What eye has witnessed, or what ear believed, in one great day, by one great arm achieved, such wondrous deeds as Hector's hand has done, and we beheld the last revolving sun? What honors the beloved of Jove adorn? Sprung from no god, and of no goddess born, yet such his acts, as Greeks unborn shall tell, and curse the battle where their fathers fell. Now speed thy hasty course along the fleet there call great Ajax and the Prince of Crete, or self to hoary Nestor will repair to keep the guards on duty be his care, for Nestor's influence best that quarter guides, whose son with Merion o'er the watch presides. To whom the Spartan, "These thy orders born say, shall I stay or with dispatch return?" "There shall thou stay," the king of men replied, "else may we miss to meet without a guide, the paths so many and the camp so wide." Still with your voice the slothful soldiers raise, urge by their fathers, fame their future praise. Forget we now our state and lofty birth, not titles here, but works, must prove our worth. To labor is the lot of man below, and when Jove gave us life, he gave us woe. This said, each parted to his several cares. The king to Nestor's sable ship repairs. The The sage protector of the Greeks he found stretched in his bed with all his arms around the various-colored scarf, the shield he rears, the shining helmet, and the pointed spears, the dreadful weapons of the warrior's rage, that, old in arms, disdain the peace of age. Then, leaning on his hand his watchful head, the hoary monarch raised his eyes and said, "What art thou speak, that on designs unknown, while others sleep, thus range the camp alone? Seek'st thou some friend or nightly sentinel? Stand off, approach not, but thy purpose tell." "O son of Neleus," thus the king rejoined, "pride of the Greeks and glory of thy kind. Lo, here the wretched Agamemnon stands, the unhappy general of the Grecian bands, whom Jove decrees with daily cares to bend, and woes that only with his life shall end. Scarce can my knees these trembling limbs sustain, and scarce my heart support its load of pain. No taste of sleep these heavy eyes have known, confused and sad, I wander thus alone, with fears distracted, with no fixed design, and all my people's miseries are mine. If aught of use thy waking thoughts suggest, since cares, like mine, deprive thy soul of rest, impart thy counsel, and assist thy friend. Now let us jointly to the trench descend. At every gate the fainting guard excite tired with the toils of day and watch of night, else may the sudden foe our works invade, so near, and favored by the gloomy shade." To him thus Nestor, "Trust the powers above, nor think proud Hector's hopes confirmed by Jove. How ill agree the views of vain mankind, and the wise counsels of the eternal mind. Audacious Hector, if the gods ordain that great Achilles rise and rage again, what toils attend thee, and what woes remain? Lo, faithful Nestor thy command obeys, the care is next our other chiefs to raise. Ulysses, Diomed, we chiefly need, Muse for strength, Iliad famed for speed. Some other be dispatched of nimbler feet to those tall ships, remotest of the fleet, where lie great Ajax and the king of Crete. To rouse the Spartan I myself decree, dear as he is to us, and dear to thee, yet must I tax his sloth, that claims no share with his great brother in his martial care. Him it behoved to every chief to sue, preventing every part performed by you, for strong necessity our toils demands, claims all our hearts, and urges all our hands. To whom the king, "With reverence we allow thy just rebukes, yet learn to spare them now. My generous brother is of gentle kind, he seems remiss, but bears a valiant mind through too much deference to our sovereign sway, content to follow when we lead the way. But now, our ills industrious to prevent, long ere the rest he rose, and sought my tent. The chiefs you named, already at his call, prepare to meet us near the navy wall. Assembling there, between the trench and gates, near the night guards, our chosen council waits. Then none, said Nestor, shall his rule withstand, for great examples justify command." With that, the venerable warrior rose, the shining greaves his manly legs enclose, his purple mantle golden buckles joined, warm with the softest wool, and doubly lined. Then rushing from his tent, he snatched in haste his steely lance, that lightened as he passed. The camp he traversed through the sleeping crowd, stopped at Ulysses' tent, and called aloud. Ulysses, sudden as the voice was sent, awakes, starts up, and issues from his tent. "What new distress, what sudden cause of fright, thus leads you wandering in the silent night, O prudent chief?" The Pylian sage replied, "Wise as thou art, be now thy wisdom tried. Whatever means of safety can be sought, whatever counsels can inspire our thought, whatever methods, or to fly or fight, all depend on this important night." He heard, returned, and took his painted shield, then joined the chiefs and followed through the field. Without his tent, bold Diomed they found, all sheathed in arms, his brave companions round, each sunk in sleep, extended on the field, his head reclining on his bossy shield. A wood of spears stood by, that, fixed upright, shot from their flashing points a quivering light. A bull's black hide composed the hero's bed, a splendid carpet rolled beneath his head. Then, with his foot, old Nestor gently shakes the slumbering chief, and in these words awakes. "Rise, son of Tydeus. To the brave and strong rest seems inglorious, and the night too long. But sleep'st thou now, when from yon hill the foe hangs o'er the fleet, and shades our walls below?" At this soft slumber from his eyelids fled, the warrior saw the hoary chief and said, "Wondrous old man, whose soul no respite knows, though years and honors bid thee seek repose, let younger Greeks our sleeping warriors wake. Ill fits thy age these toils to undertake. My friend, he answered, generous is thy care. These toils my subjects and my sons might bear, their loyal thoughts and pious love conspire to ease a sovereign and relieve a sire. But now the last despair surrounds our host. No hour must pass, no moment must be lost. Each single Greek in this conclusive strife stands on the sharpest edge of death or life. Yet, if my years thy kind regard engage, employ thy youth as I employ my age. Succeed to these my cares and rouse the rest. He serves me most, who serves his country best. This said, the hero o'er his shoulders flung a lion's spoils, that to his ankles hung, then seized his ponderous lance and strode along. Meges the bold, with Ajax famed for speed, the warrior roused and to the entrenchments laid. And now the chiefs approach the nightly guard, a wakeful squadron, each in arms prepared. The unwearied watch their listening leaders keep, and, couching close, repel invading sleep. So faithful dogs their fleecy charge maintain, with toil protected from the prowling train when the gaunt lioness, with hunger bold, springs from the mountains toward the guarded fold. Through breaking woods her rustling course they hear. Loud, and more loud, the clamors strike their ear of hounds and men. They start, they gaze around, watch every side, and turn to every sound. Thus watch the Grecians, cautious of surprise, each voice, each motion, drew their ears and eyes. Each step of passing feet increased the affright, and hostile Troy was ever full in sight. Nestor with joy the wakeful band surveyed, and thus accosted through the gloomy shade. "'Tis well, my sons. Your nightly cares employ, else must our host become the scorn of Troy. Watch thus, and Greece shall live," the hero said, then o'er the trench the following chieftains led. His son and godlike Merion marched behind, for these the princes to their council joined. The trenches passed, the assembled kings around in silent state the consistory crowned. A place there was, yet undefiled with gore, the spot where Hector stopped his rage before when night descending, from his vengeful hand reprieved the relics of the Grecian band. The plain beside with mangled core was spread, and all his progress marked by heaps of dead. There sat the mournful kings. When Neleus, son, the council opening, in these words begun. "Is there," said he, "a chief so greatly brave, his life to hazard and his country save? Lives there a man, who singly dares to go to yonder camp, or seize some straggling foe? Or favored by the night approach so near, their speech, their counsels and designs to hear? If to besiege our navies they prepare, or Troy once more must be the seat of war? This could he learn, and to our peers recite, and pass unharmed the dangers of the night. What fame were his through all succeeding days, while Phoebus shines, or men have tongues to praise? What gifts his grateful country would bestow? What must not Greece to her deliverer owe? A sable ewe each leader should provide, with each a sable lambkin by her side. At every rite his share should be increased, and his the foremost honors of the feast. Fear held them mute, alone, untaught to fear tide-eyed spoke, "The man you seek is here. Through yon black camps to bend my dangerous way, some god within commands, and I obey. But let some other chosen warrior join to raise my hopes and second my design. By mutual confidence and mutual aid, great deeds are done, and great discoveries made. The wise new prudence from the wise acquire, and one brave hero fans another's fire." Contending leaders at the word arose, each generous breast with emulation glows. So brave a task each Ajax strove to share. Bold Merion strove, and Nestor's valiant heir. The Spartan wished the second place to gain, and great Ulysses wished, nor wished in vain. Then thus the king of men the contest ends. Thou first of warriors, and thou best of friends, undaunted Diomed. What chief to join in this great enterprise is only thine. Just be thy choice without affection made, to birth or office no respect be paid, let worth determine here. The monarch spake, and inly trembled for his brother's sake. Then thus, the godlike Diomed rejoined, "My choice declares the impulse of my mind. How can I doubt, while great Ulysses stands to lend his counsels and assist our hands? A chief whose safety is Minerva's care, so famed, so dreadful in the works of war. Blessed in his conduct, I no aid require, wisdom like his might pass through flames of fire." "It fits thee not before these chiefs of fame," replied the sage, "to praise me or to blame. Praise from a friend or censure from a foe are lost on hearers that our merits know. But let us haste, night rolls the hours away, the reddening orient shows the coming day. The stars shine fainter on the ethereal plains, and of night's empire but a third remains. Thus having spoke, with generous ardor pressed, in arms terrific their huge limbs they dressed. A two-edged falchion thracimed the brave, and ample buckler to Tydides gave. Then in a leathern helm he cased his head, short of its crest and with no plume o'erspread. Such as by youths unused to arms are worn, no spoils enrich it, and no studs adorn. Next him Ulysses took a shining sword, a bow and quiver, with bright arrows stored, a well-proved casque, with leather braces bound, thy gift, Merians. His temples crowned, soft wool within, without in order spread, a boar's white teeth grinned horrid o'er his head. This from Amintor, rich Ormenus, son Autolycus by fraudful rapine won, and gave Amphidamas. From him the prize Molus received, the pledge of social ties. The helmet next by Merion was possessed, and now Ulysses' thoughtful temples pressed. Thus sheathed in arms, the council they forsake, and dark through paths oblique their progress take. Just then, in sign she favored their intent, a long-winged heron great Minerva sent. This, though surrounding shades obscured their view, by the shrill clang and whistling wings they knew. As from the right she soared, Ulysses prayed, hailed the glad omen, and addressed the maid. O daughter of that god, whose arm can wield the avenging bolt, and shake the saber shield. O thou, forever present in my way, who all my motions, all my toils survey. Safe may we pass beneath the gloomy shade, safe by thy succor to our ships conveyed, and let some deed this signal night adorn to claim the tears of Trojans, yet unborn. Then godlike Diomed preferred his prayer, daughter of Jove, unconquered Pallas. Hear, great queen of arms, whose favor Tydeus won, as thou defend'st the sire, defend the son. When on Aesopus' banks the banded powers of Greece he left, and sought the Theban towers, peace was his charge. Received with peaceful show he went a legate, but returned a foe, then helped by thee, and covered by thy shield, he fought with numbers and made numbers yield. So now be present, O celestial maid. So still continue to the race thine aid. A youthful steer shall fall beneath the stroke, untamed, unconscious of the galling yoke, with ample forehead and with spreading horns, whose taper tops refulgent gold adorns. The heroes prayed, and Pallas from the skies accords their vow, succeeds their enterprise. Now, like two lions panting for the prey, with dreadful thoughts they trace the dreary way, through the black horrors of the ensanguined plain, through dust, through blood, o'er arms, and hills of slain. Nor less bold Hector, and the sons of Troy on high designs the wakeful hours employ, the assembled peers their lofty chief enclosed, who thus the counsels of his breast proposed. What glorious man, for high attempts prepared, dares greatly venture for a rich reward? Of yonder fleet a bold discovery make, what watch they keep, and what resolves they take. If now subdued they meditate their flight, and, spent with toil, neglect the watch of night. His be the chariot that shall please him most, of all the plunder of the vanquished host, his the fair steeds that all the rest excel, and his the glory to have served so well. A youth there was among the tribes of Troy, Dalon his name, Eumed's only boy, 5 girls beside the reverend herald told. Rich was the son in brass and rich in gold, not blessed by nature with the charms of face, but swift of foot and matchless in the race. Hector, he said, my courage bids me meet this high achievement and explore the fleet. But first exalt thy scepter to the skies, and swear to grant me the demanded prize, the immortal coursers and the glittering car that bear Pelides through the ranks of war. Encouraged thus, no idle scout I go, fulfill thy wish, their whole intention know, even to the royal tent pursue my way, and all their counsels, all their aims betray. The chief then heaved the golden scepter high, attesting thus the monarch of the sky, be witness thou, immortal lord of all, whose thunder shakes the dark aerial hall, by none but Dalon shall this prize be borne, and him alone the immortal steeds adorn. Thus Hector swore. The gods were called in vain, but the rash youth prepares to scour the plain. Across his back the bended bow he flung, a wolf's gray hide around his shoulders hung, a ferret's downy fur his helmet lined, and in his hand a pointed javelin shined. Then, never to return, he sought the shore, and trod the path his feet must tread no more. Scarce had he passed the steeds and Trojan throng, still bending forward as he coursed along, when, on the hollow way, the approaching tread Ulysses marked, and thus to Diomed: "O friend, I hear some step of hostile feet, moving this way, or hastening to the fleet. Some spy, perhaps, to lurk beside the main, or nightly pillager that strips the slain. Yet let him pass and win a little space, then rush behind him and prevent his pace. But if too swift of foot he flies before, confine his course along the fleet and shore, betwixt the camp and him our spears employ, and intercept his hoped return to Troy." With that they stepped aside and stooped their head, as Dolon passed, behind a heap of dead. Along the path the spy unwary flew, soft, at just distance both the chiefs pursue. So distant they, and such the space between as when two teams of mules divide the green, to whom the hind like shares of land allows, when now new furrows part the approaching plows. Now Dolon, listening, heard them as they passed. Hector, he thought, had sent, and checked his haste till scarce at distance of a javelin's throw, no voice succeeding, he perceived the foe. As when two skillful hounds the leveret wind, or chase through woods obscure the trembling hind, now lost, now seen, they intercept his way, and from the herd still turn the flying prey. So fast, and with such fears the Trojan flew, so close, so constant, the bold Greeks pursue. Now almost on the fleet the dastard falls, and mingles with the guards that watch the walls when brave Tydides stopped. A generous thought, inspired by Pallas, in his bosom wrought, lest on the foe some forward Greek advance, and snatch the glory from his lifted lance. Then thus aloud: "Whoe'er thou art, remain, this javelin else shall fix thee to the plain," he said, and high in air the weapon cast, which wilful aired, and o'er his shoulder passed, then fixed in earth. Against the trembling wood the wretch stood propped, and quivered as he stood. A sudden palsy seized his turning head, his loose teeth chattered, and his color fled. The panting warriors seize him as he stands, and with unmanly tears his life demands. "O spare my youth, and for the breath I owe, large gifts of price my father shall bestow. Vast heaps of brass shall in your ships be told, and steel well-tempered and refulgent gold." To whom Ulysses made this wise reply: "Whoe'er thou art, be bold, nor fear to die. What moves thee, say, when sleep has closed the sight, to roam the silent fields in dead of night? Cam'st thou the secrets of our camp to find, by Hector prompted, or thy daring mind? Or art some wretch by hopes of plunder led, through heaps of carnage, to despoil the dead?" Then thus pale Dolon with a fearful look. Still, as he spoke, his limbs with horror shook. "Hither I came, by Hector's words deceived. Much did he promise, rashly I believed, no less a bribe than great Achilles' car, and those swift steeds that sweep the ranks of war. Urged me, unwilling, this attempt to make, to learn what counsels, what resolves you take. If now subdued, you fix your hopes on flight, and tired with toils, neglect the watch of night. Bold was thy aim, and glorious was the prize." Ulysses, with a scornful smile, replies: "Far other rulers those proud steeds demand, and scorn the guidance of a vulgar hand. Even great Achilles scarce their rage can tame, Achilles sprung from an immortal dame. But say, be faithful, and the truth recite. Where lies encamped the Trojan chief tonight? Where stand his coursers? In what quarter sleep their other princes? Tell what watch they keep. Say, since this conquest, what their counsels are, or here to combat, from their city far, or back to Ilion's walls transfer the war." Ulysses thus, and thus Eumed's son: what Dolon knows, his faithful tongue shall own. Hector, the peers assembling in his tent, a council holds at Ilus' monument. No certain guards the nightly watch partake, where'er yon fires ascend, the Trojans wake. Anxious for Troy, the guard the natives keep, safe in their cares, the auxiliar forces sleep, whose wives and infants, from the danger far, discharge their souls of half the fears of war. Then sleep those aids among the Trojan train, inquired the chief, or scattered o'er the plain? To whom the spy: "Their powers they thus dispose the Paeans, dreadful with their bended bows, the Carians, Caucans, the Pelasgian host, and Leleges, encamp along the coast. Not distant far, lie higher on the land the Lycian, Mysian, and Maeonian band, and Phrygia's horse, by Thymbra's ancient wall, the Thracians' utmost, and apart from all. These Troy but lately to her succor won, led on by Rhesus, great Ionius' son. I saw his coursers in proud triumph go, swift as the wind, and white as winter snow. Rich silver plates his shining car in fold, his solid arms, refulgent, flame with gold, no mortal shoulders suit the glorious load, celestial panoply to grace a god. Let me, unhappy, to your fleet be borne, or leave me here, a captive's fate to mourn in cruel chains, till your return reveal the truth or falsehood of the news I tell. To this Tydides, with a gloomy frown, think not to live, though all the truth be shown shall we dismiss thee, in some future strife to risk more bravely thy now forfeit life. Or that again, our camps thou mayst explore. No, once a traitor, thou betray'st no more. Sternly he spoke, and as the wretch prepared with humble blandishment to stroke his beard, like lightning swift the wrathful falchion flew divides the neck, and cuts the nerves in two, one instant snatched his trembling soul to hell. The head, yet speaking, muttered as it fell. The furry helmet from his brow they tear, the wolf's grey hide, the unbended bow and spear. These great Ulysses lifting to the skies, to favouring Pallas dedicates the prize. Great Queen of Arms, receive this hostile spoil, and let the Thracian steeds reward our toil. Thee, first of all the heavenly host, we praise, O speed our labours and direct our ways. This said, the spoils, with dropping gore defaced, high on a spreading tamarisk he placed, then heaped with reeds and gathered boughs the plain, to guide their footsteps to the place again. Through the still night they crossed the devious fields, slippery with blood, o'er arms and heaps of shields, arriving where the Thracian squadrons lay, and eased in sleep the labours of the day. Ranged in 3 lines, they view the prostrate band, the horses yoked beside each warrior stand. Their arms in order on the ground reclined, through the brown shade the fulgid weapons shined. Amidst lay Rhesus, stretched in sleep profound, and the white steeds behind his chariot bound. The welcome sight Ulysses first descries, and points to Diom the tempting prize. The man, the coursers, and the car behold, described by Dalan, with the arms of gold. Now brave Tydides, now thy courage try, approach the chariot, and the steeds untie, or if thy soul aspire to fiercer deeds, urge thou the slaughter, while I seize the steeds. Pallas, this said, her hero's bosom warms, breathed in his heart, and strung his nervous arms where he passed, a purple stream pursued his thirsty falchion, fat with hostile blood, bathed all his footsteps, dyed the fields with gore, and a low groan remurmured through the shore. So the grim lion, from his nightly den, o'erleaps the fences, and invades the pen-on sheep or goats, resistless in his way he falls, and foaming rends the guardless prey, nor stop the fury of his vengeful hand, till 12 lay breathless of the Thracian band. Ulysses following, as his partner slew, back by the foot each slaughtered warrior drew, the milk-white coursers studious to convey safe to the ships, he wisely cleared the way, lest the fierce steeds, not yet to battles bred, should start and tremble at the heaps of dead. Now 12 dispatched, the monarch last they found Tydides, falchion fixed him to the ground. Just then a deathful dream Minerva sent, a warlike form appeared before his tent, whose visionary steel his bosom tore, so dreamed the monarch and awaked no more. Ulysses now the snowy steeds detains and leads them, fastened by the silver reins, these with his bow unbent he lashed along. The scourge forgot on Rhesus' chariot hung. Then gave his friend the signal to retire, but him, new dangers, new achievements fire, doubtful he stood, or with his reeking blade to send more heroes to the infernal shade, drag off the car where Rhesus' armor lay, or heave with manly force and lift away. While unresolved the son of Tydeus stands, Pallas appears, and thus her chief commands. Enough, my son, from further slaughter cease, regard thy safety, and depart in peace, haste to the ships, the gotten spoils enjoy, nor tempt too far the hostile gods of Troy. The voice divine confessed the martial maid, in haste he mounted, and her word obeyed, the coursers fly before Ulysses' bow, swift as the wind and white as winter snow. Not unobserved they passed. The god of light had watched his Troy, and marked Minerva's flight, saw Tydeus' son with heavenly succor blessed, and vengeful anger filled his sacred breast. Swift to the Trojan camp descends the power, and wakes Hippocoon in the morning hour. On Rhesus' side accustomed to attend, a faithful kinsman and instructive friend, he rose and saw the field deformed with blood, an empty space where late the coursers stood. The yet warm Thracians panting on the coast, for each he wept, but for his Rhesus most. Now while on Rhesus' name he calls in vain, the gathering tumult spreads o'er all the plain. On heaps the Trojans rush, with wild affright, and wondering view the slaughters of the night. Meanwhile the chiefs, arriving at the shade where late the spoils of Hector's spy were laid, Ulysses stopped. To him Tydides bore the trophy, dropping yet with Dolon's gore, then mounts again. Again their nimbler feet the coursers ply, and thunder towards the fleet. Diomed and Ulysses, returning with the spoils of Rhsus. Old Nestor first perceived the approaching sound, bespeaking thus the Grecian peers around. Methinks the noise of trampling steeds I hear, thickening this way, and gathering on my ear, perhaps some horses of the Trojan breed. So may, ye gods. My pious hopes succeed. The great Tydides and Ulysses bear, return triumphant with this prize of war. Yet much I fear, may that fear be vain. The chiefs outnumbered by the Trojan train, perhaps, even now pursued, they seek the shore or O. Perhaps those heroes are no more. Scarce had he spoke when lo, the chiefs appear and spring to earth. The Greeks dismiss their fear. With words of friendship and extended hands they greet the kings, and Nestor first demands. Say thou, whose praises all our host proclaim, thou living glory of the Grecian name. Say whence these coursers? By what chance bestowed, the spoil of foes or present of a god? Not those fair steeds, so radiant and so gay, that draw the burning chariot of the day. Old as I am, to age I scorn to yield, and daily mingle in the martial field. But sure till now no coursers struck my sight like these, conspicuous through the ranks of fight. Some god, I deem, conferred the glorious prize, blessed as ye are, and favorites of the skies. The care of him who bids the thunder roar and her, whose fury bathes the world with gore. Father, not so, sage Ithacus rejoined, the gifts of heaven are of a nobler kind. Of Thracian lineage are the steeds ye view, whose hostile king the brave Tydides slew, sleeping he died, with all his guards around, and 12 beside lay gasping on the ground. These other spoils from conquered Dolon came, a wretch, whose swiftness was his only fame. By Hector sent our forces to explore, he now lies headless on the sandy shore. Then o'er the trench the bounding coursers flew, the joyful Greeks with loud acclaim pursue. Straight to Tydides, high pavilion borne, the matchless steeds his ample stalls adorn. The neighing coursers their new fellows greet, and the full racks are heaped with generous wheat. But Dolon's armor, to his ships conveyed, high on the painted stern Ulysses laid, a trophy destined to the blue-eyed maid. Now from nocturnal sweat and sanguine stain they cleanse their bodies in the neighboring main, then in the polished bath, refreshed from toil, their joints they supple with dissolving oil, in due repast indulge the genial hour, and first to Pallas the libations pour, they sit, rejoicing in her aid divine, and the crowned goblet foams with floods of wine. Book 11. Argument. The third battle, and the acts of Agamemnon. Agamemnon, having armed himself, leads the Grecians to battle. Hector prepares the Trojans to receive them, while Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva give the signals of war. Agamemnon bears all before him, and Hector is commanded by Jupiter, who sends Iris for that purpose, to decline the engagement, till the king shall be wounded and retire from the field. He then makes a great slaughter of the enemy. Ulysses and Diomed put a stop to him for a time, but the latter, being wounded by Paris, is obliged to desert his companion, who is encompassed by the Trojans, wounded, and in the utmost danger, till Menelaus and Ajax rescue him. Hector comes against Ajax, but that hero alone opposes multitudes and rallies the Greeks. In the meantime Machaon, in the other wing of the army, is pierced with an arrow by Paris, and carried from the fight in Nestor's chariot. Achilles, who overlooked the action from his ship, sent Patroclus to inquire which of the Greeks was wounded in that manner. Nestor entertains him in his tent with an account of the accidents of the day, and a long recital of some former wars which he remembered, tending to put Patroclus upon persuading Achilles to fight for his countrymen, or at least to permit him to do it, clad in Achilles' armor. Patroclus, on his return, meets Eurypylus also wounded, and assists him in that distress. This book opens with the 820th day of the poem, and the same day, with its various actions and adventures, is extended through the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and part of the 18th books. The scene lies in the field, near the monument of Ilus. The saffron morn with early blushes spread, now rose refulgent from Tithonus' bed, with new-born day to gladden mortal sight, and gild the courts of heaven with sacred light, when baleful Eris, sent by Jove's command, the torch of discord blazing in her hand, through the red skies her bloody sign extends, and, wrapped in tempests, o'er the fleet descends. High on Ulysses' bark her horrid stand she took, and thundered through the seas and land. Even Ajax and Achilles heard the sound, whose ships, remote, the guarded navy bound. Thence the black fury through the Grecian throng with horror sounds the loud Orthian song, the navy shakes, and at the dire alarms each bosom boils, each warrior starts to arms. No more they sigh, inglorious to return, but breathe revenge, and for the combat burn. The descent of discord. The king of men his hardy host inspires with loud command, with great example fires. Himself first rose, himself before the rest his mighty limbs in radiant armor dressed, and first he cased his manly legs around in shining greaves with silver buckles bound. The beaming cuirass next adorned his breast, the same which once King Cinyras possessed. The fame of Greece and her assembled host had reached that monarch on the Cyprian coast. 'Twas then, the friendship of the chief to gain, this glorious gift he sent, nor sent in vain. 10 rows of azure steel the work enfold, twice 10 of tin, and 12 of ductile gold, 3 glittering dragons to the gorget rise, whose imitated scales against the skies reflected various light, and arching bowed, like colored rainbows o'er a showery cloud. Jove's wondrous bow, of 3 celestial dyes, placed as a sign to man amidst the skies. A radiant baldric, o'er his shoulder tied, sustained the sword that glittered at his side. Gold was the hilt, a silver sheath encased the shining blade, and golden hangers graced. His buckler's mighty orb was next displayed, that round the warrior cast a dreadful shade. 10 zones of brass its ample brim surround, and twice 10 bosses the bright convex crowned. Tremendous Gorgon frowned upon its field, and circling terrors filled the expressive shield. Within its concave hung a silver thong, on which a mimic serpent creeps along. His azure length in easy waves extends, till in 3 heads the embroidered monster ends. Last o'er his brows his fourfold helm he placed, with nodding horsehair formidably graced, and in his hands 2 steely javelins wields, that blaze to heaven and lighten all the fields. That instant Juno and the martial maid in happy thunders promised Greece their aid. High o'er the chief they clash their arms in air, and, leaning from the clouds, expect the war. Close to the limits of the trench and mound, the fiery coursers to their chariots bound the squires restrained. The foot, with those who wield the lighter arms, rush forward to the field. To second these, in close array combined, the squadrons spread their sable wings behind. Now shouts and tumults wake the tardy sun, as with the light the warriors' toils begun. Even Jove, whose thunder spoke his wrath, distilled red drops of blood o'er all the fatal field, the woes of men unwilling to survey and all the slaughters that must stain the day. Near Ilus' tomb, in order ranged around, the Trojan lines possessed the rising ground. Their wise Polydamas and Hector stood Aeneas, honored as a guardian god, bold Polybus, Agenor the divine, the brother warriors of Antenor's line, with youthful Acamas, whose beauteous face and fair proportion matched the ethereal race. Great Hector, covered with his spacious shield, plies all the troops and orders all the field. As the red star now shows his sanguine fires through the dark clouds, and now in night retires, thus through the ranks appeared the godlike man, plunged in the rear or blazing in the van, while streamy sparkles, restless as he flies, flash from his arms, as lightning from the skies. As sweating reapers in some wealthy field, ranged in 2 bands, their crooked weapons wield, bear down the furrows, till their labors meet. Thick fall the heapy harvests at their feet. So Greece and Troy the field of war divide, and falling ranks are strowed on every side. None stooped a thought to base inglorious flight, but horse to horse, and man to man they fight. Not rabid wolves more fierce contest their prey. Each wounds, each bleeds, but none resign the day. Discord with joy the scene of death descries, and drinks large slaughter at her sanguine eyes. Discord alone, of all the immortal train, swells the red horrors of this direful plain. The gods in peace their golden mansions fill, ranged in bright order on the Olympian hill, but general murmurs told their griefs above, and each accused the partial will of Jove. Meanwhile, apart, superior, and alone, the eternal monarch on his awful throne, wrapped in the blaze of boundless glory sate, and fixed, fulfilled the just decrees of fate. On earth he turned his all-considering eyes, and marked the spot where Ilion's towers arise, the sea with ships, the fields with armies spread, the victors rage, the dying, and the dead. Thus, while the morning beams, increasing bright, o'er heaven's pure azure spread the glowing light, commutual death the fate of war confounds, each adverse battle gored with equal wounds. But now, what time in some sequestered vale the weary woodman spreads his sparing meal, when his tired arms refuse the axe to rear, and claim a respite from the sylvan war? But not till half the prostrate forests lay stretched in long ruin, and exposed to day. Then, nor till then, the Greeks, impulsive, might pierce the black phalanx, and let in the light. Great Agamemnon then the slaughter led, and slew Bienner at his people's head, whose squire Achilles, with a sudden spring, leaped from the chariot to revenge his king. But in his front he felt the fatal wound, which pierced his brain and stretched him on the ground. Atrides spoiled, and left them on the plain. Vain was their youth, their glittering armor vain, now soiled with dust, and naked to the sky, their snowy limbs and beauteous bodies lie. Two sons of Priam next to battle move, the product, one of marriage, one of love. In the same car the brother warriors ride, this took the charge to combat, that to guide, far other task than when they want to keep, on Ida's tops, their father's fleecy sheep. These on the mountains once Achilles found, and captive led, with pliant osiers bound, then to their sire for ample sums restored, but now to perish by Atrides' sword. Pierced in the breast the base-born Isus bleeds, cleft through the head his brother's fate succeeds, swift to the spoil the hasty victor falls, and stripped, their features to his mind recalls. The Trojans see the youths untimely die, but helpless tremble for themselves, and fly. So when a lion ranging o'er the lawns finds, on some grassy lair, the couching fawns, their bones he cracks, their reeking vitals draws, and grinds the quivering flesh with bloody jaws. The frighted hind beholds, and dares not stay, but swift through rustling thickets bursts her way, all drowned in sweat. The panting mother flies, and the big tears roll trickling from her eyes. Amidst the tumult of the routed train, the sons of false Antimachus were slain, he who for bribes his faithless counsels sold, and voted Helen's stay for Paris gold. Atrides marked, as these their safety sought, and slew the children for the father's fault. Their headstrong horse unable to restrain, they shook with fear, and dropped the silken rein. Then in the chariot on their knees they fall, and thus with lifted hands for mercy call. O spare our youth, and for the life we owe Antimachus shall copious gifts bestow, soon as he hears, that not in battle slain, the Grecian ships his captive sons detain, large heaps of brass in ransom shall be told, and steel well-tempered and persuasive gold. These words, attended with the flood of tears, the youths addressed to unrelenting ears, the vengeful monarch gave this stern reply. If from Antimachus ye spring, ye die, the daring wretch who once in council stood to shed Ulysses, and my brother's blood for proffered peace, and sues his seed for grace. No, die, and pay the forfeit of your race. This said, Pisander from the car he cast, and pierced his breast. Supine he breathed his last. His brother leaped to earth, but as he lay, the trenchant falchion lopped his hands away, his severed head was tossed among the throng, and, rolling, drew a bloody train along. Then, where the thickest fought, the victor flew, the king's example all his Greeks pursue. Now by the foot the flying foot were slain, horse trod by horse, lay foaming on the plain. From the dry fields thick clouds of dust arise, shade the black host, and intercept the skies. The brass-hoofed steeds tumultuous plunge and bound, and the thick thunder beats the laboring ground. Still slaughtering on, the king of men proceeds, the distanced army wonders at his deeds as when the winds with raging flames conspire. And o'er the forests roll the flood of fire. In blazing heaps the groves old honors fall, and one refulgent ruin levels all, before Atrides. Rage so sinks the foe, whole squadrons vanish, and proud heads lie low. The steeds fly trembling from his waving sword, and many a car, now lighted of its lord, wide o'er the field with guideless fury rolls, breaking their ranks and crushing out their souls, while his keen falchion drinks the warriors' lives, more grateful now, to vultures than their wives. Perhaps great Hector then had found his fate, but Jove and destiny prolonged his date. Safe from the darts, the care of heaven he stood, amidst alarms and death and dust and blood. Now past the tomb where ancient Iliad lay, through the midfield the rooted urge their way, where the wild figs the adjoining summit crown, the path they take, and speed to reach the town. As swift, Atrides with loud shouts pursued, hot with his toil, and bathed in hostile blood. Now near the beech tree and the Scaean gates, the hero halts and his associates waits. Meanwhile on every side around the plain, dispersed, disordered, fly the Trojan train. So flies a herd of beeves, that here dismayed the lions roaring through the midnight shade, on heaps they tumble with successless haste. The savage seizes, draws, and rends the last. Not with less fury stern Atrides flew, still pressed the rout, and still the hindmost slew. Hurled from their cars the bravest chiefs are killed, and rage and death and carnage load the field. Now storms the victor at the Trojan wall, surveys the towers, and meditates their fall. But Jove descending shook the Idaean hills, and down their summits poured 100 rills. The unkindled lightning in his hand he took, and thus the many-colored maid bespoke. Iris, with haste thy golden wings display, to godlike Hector this our word convey. While Agamemnon wastes the ranks around, fights in the front, and bathes with blood the ground, bid him give way. But issue forth commands, and trust the war to less important hands. But when, or wounded by the spear or dart, that chief shall mount his chariot and depart, then Jove shall string his arm and fire his breast, then to her ships shall flying Greece be pressed, till to the main the burning sun descend, and sacred night her awful shade extend. He spoke, and Iris at his word obeyed. On wings of winds descends the various maid. The chief she found amidst the ranks of war, close to the bulwarks, on his glittering car. The goddess then, O son of Priam, hear. From Jove I come, and his high mandate bear. While Agamemnon wastes the ranks around, fights in the front, and bathes with blood the ground, abstain from fight. Yet issue forth commands, and trust the war to less important hands. But when, or wounded by the spear or dart, the chief shall mount his chariot and depart. Then Jove shall string thy arm and fire thy breast, then to her ships shall flying Greece be pressed, till to the main the burning sun descend, and sacred night her awful shade extend. She said and vanished. Hector, with a bound, springs from his chariot on the trembling ground, in clanging arms. He grasps in either hand a pointed lance, and speeds from band to band, revives their ardor, turns their steps from flight, and wakes anew the dying flames of fight. They stand to arms, the Greeks their onset dare, condense their powers, and wait the coming war. New force, new spirit to each breast returns, the fight renewed with fiercer fury burns. The king leads on, all fix on him their eye, and learn from him to conquer or to die. Ye sacred nine, celestial muses, tell who faced him first, and by his prowess fell. The great Iphidamas, the bold and young, from sage Antenor and Thenos sprung, whom from his youth his grandsire Cisseus bred, and nursed in Thrace where snowy flocks are fed. Scarce did the down his rosy cheeks invest, and early honor warm his generous breast, when the kind sire consigned his daughter's charms, Thenos' sister, to his youthful arms. But called by glory to the wars of Troy, he leaves untasted the first fruits of joy. From his loved bride departs with melting eyes, and swift to aid his dearer country flies. With 12 black ships he reached Percope's strand, thence took the long laborious march by land. Now fierce for fame, before the ranks he springs, towering in arms, and braves the king of kings. Atrides first discharged the missive spear, the Trojan stooped, the javelin passed in air. Then near the corslet, at the monarch's heart, with all his strength, the youth directs his dart. But the broad belt, with plates of silver bound, the point rebaited and repelled the wound. Encumbered with the dart, Atrides stands, till grasped with force, he wrenched it from his hands. At once his weighty sword discharged a wound full on his neck, that felled him to the ground. Stretched in the dust, the unhappy warrior lies, and sleep eternal seals his swimming eyes. O worthy better fate! O early slain! Thy country's friend, and virtuous though in vain. No more the youth shall join his consort's side, at once a virgin, and at once a bride. No more with presents her embraces meet, or lay the spoils of conquest at her feet, on whom his passion, lavish of his store, bestowed so much, and vainly promised more. Unwept, uncovered on the plain he lay, while the proud victor bore his arms away. Coon, Antenor's eldest hope, was nigh. Tears, at the sight, came starting from his eye, while pierced with grief the much-loved youth he viewed, and the pale features now deformed with blood. Then with his spear unseen, his time he took, aimed at the king, and near his elbow struck. The thrilling steel transpierced the brawny part, and through his arm stood forth the barbed dart. Surprised the monarch feels, yet void of fear on Coon rushes with his lifted spear. His brother's corpse the pious Trojan draws, and calls his country to assert his cause, defends him breathless on the sanguine field, and o'er the body spreads his ample shield. Atrides, marking an unguarded part, transfixed the warrior with his brazen dart, prone on his brother's bleeding breast he lay. The monarch's falchion lopped his head away. The social shades the same dark journey go, and join each other in the realms below. The vengeful victor rages round the fields, with every weapon art or fury yields. By the long lance, the sword, or ponderous stone whole ranks are broken, and whole troops o'erthrown. This, while yet warm, distilled the purple flood. But when the wound grew stiff with clotted blood, then grinding tortures his strong bosom rend, less keen those darts the fierce Ilithyie send. The powers that cause the teeming matron's throes, sad mothers of unutterable woes. Stung with the smart, all panting with the pain, he mounts the car, and gives his squire the rein, then with a voice which fury made more strong, and pain augmented, thus exhorts the throng. O friends! O Greeks! Assert your honors, one proceed, and finish what this arm begun. Lo! Angry Jove forbids your chief to stay, and envies half the glories of the day. He said, the driver whirls his lengthful thong, the horses fly, the chariot smokes along. Clouds from their nostrils the fierce coursers blow, and from their sides the foam descends in snow, shot through the battle in a moment's space. The wounded monarch at his tent they place. No sooner Hector saw the king retired, but thus his Trojans and his aids he fired. Here, all ye Dardan, all ye Lycian race, famed in close fight, and dreadful face to face, now call to mind your ancient trophies won, your great forefathers' virtues and your own. Behold, the general flies, deserts his powers. Lo, Jove himself declares the conquest ours. Now on yon ranks impel your foaming steeds, and, sure of glory, dare immortal deeds. With words like these the fiery chief alarms his fainting host, and every bosom warms. As the bold hunter cheers his hounds to tear the brindled lion, or the tusky bear, with voice and hand provokes their doubting heart, and springs the foremost with his lifted dart. So godlike Hector prompts his troops to dare, nor prompts alone, but leads himself the war. On the black body of the foe he pours as from the cloud's deep bosom, swelled with showers, a sudden storm the purple ocean sweeps, drives the wild waves, and tosses all the deeps. Say Muse. When Jove the Trojans' glory crowned, beneath his arm what heroes bit the ground. Asius, Dolops, and Autonus died, Opites next was added to their side, then brave Hipponus, famed in many a fight Opheltius, Orus, sunk to endless night, Aesymnus, Agelaus, all chiefs of name, the rest were vulgar deaths unknown to fame. As when a western whirlwind, charged with storms, dispels the gathered clouds that notice forms, the gust continued, violent and strong, rolls sable clouds in heaps on heaps along, now to the skies the foaming billows rears, now breaks the surge, and wide the bottom bears. Thus, raging Hector, with resistless hands orderns, confounds, and scatters all their bands. Now the last ruin the whole host appalls, now Greece had trembled in her wooden walls, but wise Ulysses called Tydides forth, his soul rekindled, and awaked his worth. And stand we deedless, O eternal shame, till Hector's arm involve the ships in flame. Haste, let us join and combat side by side. The warrior thus, and thus the friend replied. No martial toil I shun, no danger fear, let Hector come, I wait his fury here. But Jove with conquest crowns the Trojan train, and, Jove our foe, all human force is vain. He sighed, but sighing raised his vengeful steel, and from his car the proud Thymbrius fell. Molion, the charioteer, pursued his lord, his death ennobled by Ulysses' sword. There slain, they left them in eternal night, then plunged amidst the thickest ranks of fight. So 2 wild boars outstrip the following hounds, then swift revert, and wounds return for wounds. Stern Hector's conquests in the middle plain stood checked a while, and Greece respired again. The sons of Merops shone amidst the war, towering they rode in one refulgent car. In deep prophetic arts their father skilled, had warned his children from the Trojan field. Fate urged them on. The father warned in vain, they rushed to fight, and perished on the plain, their breasts no more the vital spirit warms. The stern Tydides strips their shining arms. Hyperachus by great Ulysses dies, and rich Hippodamus becomes his prize. Great Jove from Ide with slaughter fills his sight, and level hangs the doubtful scale of fight. By Tydeus, Lance Agastrophus was slain, the far-famed hero of Paeonian strain, winged with his fears, on foot he strove to fly. His steeds too distant, and the foe too nigh, through broken orders, swifter than the wind he fled, but flying left his life behind. This Hector sees, as his experienced eyes traverse the files, and to the rescue flies. Shouts, as he passed, the crystal regions rend, and moving armies on his march attend. Great Diomed himself was seized with fear, and thus bespoke his brother of the war. Mark how this way yon bending squadrons yield. The storm rolls on, and Hector rules the field, here stand his utmost force. The warrior said, swift at the word his ponderous javelin fled, nor missed its aim, but where the plumage danced raised the smooth cone, and thence obliquely glanced. Safe in his helm, the gift of Phoebus, hands, without a wound the Trojan hero stands, but yet so stunned that, staggering on the plain, his arm and knee his sinking bulk sustain, or his dim sight the misty vapors rise, and a short darkness shades his swimming eyes. Tydides followed to regain his lance, while Hector rose, recovered from the trance, remounts his car, and herds amidst the crowd. The Greek pursues him, and exults aloud. Once more thank Phoebus for thy forfeit breath, or thank that swiftness which outstrips the death. Well by Apollo are thy prayers repaid, and oft that partial power has lent his aid. Thou shalt not long the death deserved withstand, if any god assist Tydides' hand. Fly then inglorious. But thy flight, this day whole hecatombs of Trojan ghosts shall pay. Him, while he triumphed, Paris eyed from far, the spouse of Helen, the fair cause of war, around the fields his feathered shafts he sent from ancient Ilus' ruined monument. Behind the column placed, he bent his bow and winged an arrow at the unwary foe just as he stooped, Agastrophus's crest to seize, and drew the corslet from his breast. The bowstring twanged, nor flew the shaft in vain, but pierced his foot and nailed it to the plain. The laughing Trojan, with a joyful spring, leaps from his ambush and insults the king. He bleeds. He cries, some god has sped my dart. Would the same god had fixed it in his heart. So Troy, relieved from that wide-wasting hand, should breathe from slaughter and in combat stand, whose sons now tremble at his darted spear, as scattered lambs the rushing lion fear. He dauntless thus, thou conqueror of the fair, thou woman warrior with the curling hair, vain archer, trusting to the distant dart, unskilled in arms to act a manly part. Thou hast but done what boys or women can, such hands may wound, but not incense a man. Nor boast the scratch thy feeble arrow gave, a coward's weapon never hurts the brave. Not so this dart, which thou mayst he one day feel, fate wings its flight, and death is on the steel. Where this but lights, some noble life expires, its touch makes orphans, bathes the cheeks of sires, steeps earth in purple, gluts the birds of air, and leaves such objects as distract the fair. Ulysses hastens with a trembling heart, before him steps, and bending draws the dart, forth flows the blood. An eager pang succeeds, Tydides mounts, and to the navy speeds. Now on the field Ulysses stands alone, the Greeks all fled, the Trojans pouring on, but stands collected in himself and whole, and questions thus his own unconquered soul. What further subterfuge, what hopes remain? What shame, inglorious if I quit the plain? What danger, singly if I stand the ground, my friends all scattered, all the foes around? Yet wherefore doubtful? Let this truth suffice, the brave meets danger, and the coward flies. To die or conquer proves a hero's heart, and knowing this I know a soldier's part. Such thoughts revolving in his careful breast, near and more near, the shady cohorts pressed. These, in the warrior, their own fate enclose, and round him deep the steely circle grows. So fares a boar whom all the troop surrounds of shouting huntsmen and of clamorous hounds. He grinds his ivory tusks. He foams with ire. His sanguine eyeballs glare with living fire, by these, by those, on every part is plied, and the red slaughter spreads on every side. Pierced through the shoulder, first Diopes fell, next Anamas, and Thun sank to hell. Chersidamas, beneath the naval thrust, falls prone to earth, and grasps the bloody dust. Charops, the son of Hippasus, was near. Ulysses reached him with the fatal spear. But to his aid his brother Socus flies, Socus the brave, the generous, and the wise. Near as he drew, the warrior thus began. O great Ulysses, much enduring man, not deeper skilled in every martial sleight, than worn to toils, and active in the fight. This day 2 brothers shall thy conquest grace, and end at once the great Hippasian race, or thou beneath this lance must press the field. He said, and forceful pierced his spacious shield. Through the strong brass the ringing javelin thrown, ploughed half his side, and bared it to the bone. By Pallas' care, the spear, though deep infixed, stopped short of life, nor with his entrails mixed. The wound not mortal wise Ulysses knew, then furious thus, but first some steps withdrew. Unhappy man, whose death our hands shall grace, fate calls thee hence, and finished is thy race. Nor longer check my conquests on the foe, but, pierced by this, to endless darkness go, and add one spectre to the realms below. He spoke, while Socus, seized with sudden fright, trembling gave way, and turned his back to flight. Between his shoulders pierced the following dart, and held its passage through the panting heart. Wide in his breast appeared the grisly wound. He falls, his armor rings against the ground. Then thus Ulysses, gazing on the slain, famed son of Hippasus. There press the plain, there ends thy narrow span assigned by fate. Heaven owes Ulysses yet a longer date. Ah, wretch! No father shall thy corpse compose, thy dying eyes no tender mother close, but hungry birds shall tear those balls away, and hovering vultures scream around their prey. Me Greece shall honor, when I meet my doom, with solemn funerals and a lasting tomb. Then raging with intolerable smart, he writhes his body and extracts the dart. The dart a tide of spouting gore pursued, and gladdened Troy with sight of hostile blood. Now troops on troops the fainting chief invade, forced he recedes, and loudly calls for aid. Thrice to its pitch his lofty voice he rears, the well-known voice thrice Menelaus hears. Alarmed, to Ajax Telamon he cried, who shares his labors and defends his side. O friend! Ulysses' shouts invade my ear, distressed he seems, and no assistance near. Strong as he is, yet one opposed to all, oppressed by multitudes, the best may fall. Greece robbed of him must bid her host despair, and feel a loss not ages can repair. Then, where the cry directs, his course he bends. Great Ajax, like the god of war, attends. The prudent chief in sore distress they found, with bands of furious Trojans compassed round. As when some huntsman, with a flying spear from the blind thicket, wounds a stately deer down his cleft side, while fresh the blood distills. He bounds aloft and scuds from hills to hills, till life's warm vapor issuing through the wound, wild mountain wolves the fainting beast surround. Just as their jaws his prostrate limbs invade, the lion rushes through the woodland shade. The wolves, though hungry, scour dispersed away. The lordly savage vindicates his prey. Ulysses thus, unconquered by his pains, a single warrior half a host sustains. But soon as Ajax leaves his tower-like shield, the scattered crowds fly frighted o'er the field. Atrides, arm the sinking hero stays, and saved from numbers to his car conveys. Victorious Ajax plies the routed crew, and first Doricles, Priam's son, he slew. On strong Pandocus next inflicts a wound, and lays Lysander bleeding on the ground. As when a torrent, swelled with wintry rains, pours from the mountains o'er the deluged plains, and pines and oaks, from their foundations torn, a country's ruins. To the seas are borne, fierce Ajax thus o'erwhelms the yielding throng. Men, steeds, and chariots roll in heaps along. But Hector, from this scene of slaughter far, raged on the left and ruled the tide of war. Loud groans proclaim his progress through the plain, and deep Scamander swells with heaps of slain. There Nestor and Idomeneus oppose the warrior's fury. There the battle glows, there fierce on foot, or from the chariot's height, his sword deforms the beauteous ranks of fight. The spouse of Helen, dealing darts around, had pierced Machaon with a distant wound. In his right shoulder the broad shaft appeared, and trembling Greece for her physician feared. To Nestor then Idomeneus begun, glory of Greece, old Neleus, valiant son. Ascend thy chariot, haste with speed away, and great Machaon to the ships convey. A wise physician skilled our wounds to heal is more than armies to the public weal. Old Nestor mounts the seat. Beside him rode the wounded offspring of the healing god. He lends the lash. The steeds with sounding feet shake the dry field and thunder toward the fleet. But now Cebrians, from Hector's car, surveyed the various fortune of the war. While here, he cried, the flying Greeks are slain Trojans on Trojans yonder load the plain. Before great Ajax, see the mingled throng of men and chariots driven in heaps along. I know him well, distinguished o'er the field by the broad glittering of the sevenfold shield. Thither, O Hector, thither urge thy steeds, there danger calls, and there the combat bleeds, there horse and foot in mingled deaths unite, and groans of slaughter mix with shouts of fight. Thus having spoke, the driver's lash resounds, swift through the ranks the rapid chariot bounds. Stung by the stroke, the coursers scour the fields o'er heaps of carcasses and hills of shields. The horses' hoofs are bathed in heroes' gore, and, dashing, purple all the car before, the groaning axle sable drops distills, and mangled carnage clogs the rapid wheels. Here Hector, plunging through the thickest fight, broke the dark phalanx and let in the light. By the long lance, the sword, or ponderous stone, the ranks he scattered and the troops o'erthrown, Ajax he shuns, through all the dire debate, and fears that arm whose force he felt so late. But partial Jove, espousing Hector's part, shot heaven-bred horror through the Grecian's heart. Confused, unnerved in Hector's presence, grown amazed he stood, with terrors not his own. O'er his broad back his moony shield he threw, and, glaring round, by tardy steps withdrew. Thus the grim lion his retreat maintains, beset with watchful dogs and shouting swains, repulsed by numbers from the nightly stalls, though rage impels him, and though hunger calls, long stands the showering darts and missile fires. Then sourly slow the indignant beast retires. So turned stern Ajax, by whole hosts repelled, while his swollen heart at every step rebelled. As the slow beast, with heavy strength endued, in some wide field by troops of boys pursued, though round his sides a wooden tempest rain crops the tall harvest, and lays waste the plain, thick on his hide the hollow blows resound. The patient animal maintains his ground, scarce from the field with all their efforts chased, and stirs but slowly when he stirs at last. On Ajax thus a weight of Trojans hung, the strokes redoubled on his buckler rung. Confiding now in bulky strength he stands, now turns, and backward bears the yielding bands, now stiff recedes, yet hardly seems to fly, and threats his followers with retorted eye. Fixed as the bar between two warring powers, while hissing darts descend in iron showers. In his broad buckler many a weapon stood, its surface bristled with a quivering wood, and many a javelin, guiltless on the plain, marks the dry dust, and thirsts for blood in vain. But bold Eurypylus his aid imparts, and dauntless springs beneath a cloud of darts, whose eager javelin launched against the foe, great Apisaon felt the fatal blow, from his torn liver the red current flowed, and his slack knees desert their dying load. The victor rushing to despoil the dead from Paris, bow a vengeful arrow fled, fixed in his nervous thigh the weapon stood, fixed was the point, but broken was the wood. Back to the lines the wounded Greek retired, yet thus retreating, his associates fired. What god, O Grecians, has your hearts dismayed? O turn to arms, tease Ajax claims your aid. This hour he stands the mark of hostile rage, and this the last brave battle he shall wage. Haste, join your forces, from the gloomy grave the warrior rescue and your country save. Thus urged the chief. A generous troop appears, who spread their bucklers and advance their spears to guard their wounded friend. While thus they stand with pious care, great Ajax joins the band, each takes new courage at the hero's sight, the hero rallies and renews the fight. Thus raged both armies like conflicting fires, while Nestor's chariot far from fight retires, his coursers steeped in sweat and stained with gore, the Greeks, preserver, great Machaon bore. That hour Achilles, from the topmost height of his proud fleet, o'erlooked the fields of fight. His feasted eyes beheld around the plain the Grecian rout, the slaying and the slain. His friend Machaon, singled from the rest, a transient pity touched his vengeful breast. Straight to Menodius, much-loved son he sent, graceful as Mars, Patroclus quits his tent in evil hour. Then fate decreed his doom, and fixed the date of all his woes to come. Why calls my friend? Thy loved injunctions lay, whate'er thy will, Patroclus shall obey. O first of friends! Pelides thus replied, still at my heart and ever at my side. The time is come, when yon despairing host shall learn the value of the man they lost. Now, at my knees, the Greeks shall pour their moan, and proud Atrides tremble on his throne. Go now to Nestor, and from him be taught what wounded warrior late his chariot brought, for, seen at distance, and but seen behind, his form recalled Machaon to my mind, nor could I, through yon cloud, discern his face. The coursers passed me with so swift a pace. The hero said. His friend obeyed with haste, through intermingled ships and tents he passed. The chiefs descending from their car he found, the panting steeds Eurymedon and unbound. The warriors standing on the breezy shore to dry their sweat and wash away the gore, here paused a moment, while the gentle gale conveyed that freshness the cool seas exhale, then to consult on farther methods went, and took their seats beneath the shady tent. The draught prescribed, fair Hecatomb prepares Arsenus' daughter graced with golden hairs, whom to his aged arms a royal slave Greece as the prize of Nestor's wisdom gave. A table first with azure feet she placed, whose ample orb a brazen charger graced, honey new pressed, the sacred flour of wheat, and wholesome garlic crown the savory treat. Next her white hand an antique goblet brings, a goblet sacred to the Pylian kings from eldest times. Embossed with studs of gold, 2 feet support it, and 4 handles hold on each bright handle, bending o'er the brink, in sculptured gold, 2 turtles seem to drink. A massy weight, yet heaved with ease by him when the brisk nectar overlook the brim. Tempered in this, the nymphiform divine pours a large portion of the Pramnian wine, with goat's milk cheese a flavorous taste bestows, and last with flour the smiling surface strows. This for the wounded prince the dame prepares. The cordial beverage reverend Nestor shares, salubrious draughts the warrior's thirst allay, and pleasing conference beguiles the day. Meantime Patroclus, by Achilles sent, unheard approached and stood before the tent. Old Nestor, rising then, the hero led to his high seat. The chief refused and said, "'Tis now no season for these kind delays. The great Achilles with impatience stays. To great Achilles this respect I owe, who asks, what hero, wounded by the foe, was borne from combat by thy foaming steeds? With grief I see the great Machaon bleeds. This to report, my hasty course I bend, thou know'st the fiery temper of my friend. Can then the sons of Greece, the sage rejoined, excite compassion in Achilles' mind? Seeks he the sorrows of our host to know? This is not half the story of our woe. Tell him, not great Machaon bleeds alone. Our bravest heroes in the navy grown, Ulysses, Agamemnon, Diomed, and stern Eurypylus already bleed. But what flattering hopes I entertain. Achilles heeds not, but derides our pain. Even till the flames consume our fleet he stays, and waits the rising of the fatal blaze. Chief after chief the raging foe destroys, calm he looks on, and every death enjoys. Now the slow course of all-impairing time unstrings my nerves, and ends my manly prime. Oh, had I still that strength my youth possessed, when this bold arm the Epian powers oppressed, the bulls of Iliad in glad triumph led, and stretched the great Idomeneus dead. Then from my fury fled the trembling swains, and ours was all the plunder of the plains. 50 white flocks, full 50 herds of swine, as many goats, as many lowing kine, and thrice the number of unrivaled steeds, all teeming females, and of generous breeds. These, as my first essay of arms, I won. Old Neleus gloried in his conquering son. Thus Iliad forced, her long arrears restored, and shares were parted to each Pylian lord. The state of Pyle was sunk to last despair, when the proud Eleans first commenced the war, for Neleus' sons Alcides, rage had slain, of 12 bold brothers I alone remain. Oppressed, we armed, and now this conquest gained, my sire 300 chosen sheep obtained. That large reprisal he might justly claim for prize defrauded and insulted fame, when Eli's monarch at the public course detained his chariot and victorious horse. The rest the people shared, myself surveyed the just partition, and due victims paid. 3 days were past, when Eli's rose to war with many a courser and with many a car. The sons of Actor at their army's head, young as they were, the vengeful squadrons led. High on the rock fair Thyrsa stands, our utmost frontier on the Pylian lands. Not far the streams of famed Alpheus flow, the stream they passed, and pitched their tents below. Pallas, descending in the shades of night, alarms the Pylians and commands the fight. Each burns for fame and swells with martial pride, myself the foremost. But my sire denied, feared for my youth, exposed to stern alarms, and stopped my chariot and detained my arms. My sire denied in vain. On foot I fled amidst our chariots, for the goddess led. Along fair Erin's delightful plain, soft Minyas rolls his waters to the main. There, horse and foot, the Pylian troops unite, and sheathed in arms, expect the dawning light. Thence, ere the sun advanced his noonday flame, to great Alpheus, sacred source we came. There first to Jove our solemn rites were paid. An untamed heifer pleased the blue-eyed maid, a bull, Alpheus, and a bull was slain to the blue monarch of the watery main. In arms we slept, beside the winding flood, while round the town the fierce Epians stood. Soon as the sun, with all-revealing ray, flamed in the front of heaven and gave the day. Bright scenes of arms and works of war appear, the nations meet, their Pylos Eli's here. The first who fell beneath my javelin bled King Augea's son and spouse of Agamemnon. She that all simples healing virtues knew, and every herb that drinks the morning dew. I seized his car, the van of battle led, the Epians saw, they trembled and they fled. The foe dispersed, their bravest warrior killed, fierce as the whirlwind now I swept the field. Full 50 captive chariots graced my train, 2 chiefs from each fell breathless to the plain. Then actors' sons had died, but Neptune shrouds the youthful heroes in a veil of clouds. O'er heapy shields, and o'er the prostrate throng, collecting spoils and slaughtering all along, through wide Buprasian fields we forced the foes, where o'er the vales the Olenian rocks arose, till Pallas stopped us where Alysium flows. Even there the hindmost of the rear I slay, and the same arm that led concludes the day, then back to Pyle triumphant take my way. There to high Jove were public thanks assigned, as first of gods, to Nestor of mankind. Such then I was, impelled by youthful blood, so proved my valor for my country's good. Achilles with unactive fury glows, and gives to passion what to Greece he owes. How shall he grieve, when to the eternal shade her hosts shall sink, nor his the power to aid? O friend, my memory recalls the day when, gathering aids along the Grecian sea, I and Ulysses touched at Phthio's port, and entered Peleus' hospitable court. A bull to Jove he slew in sacrifice, and poured libations on the flaming thighs. Thyself, Achilles, and thy reverend sire Menodius, the fragments on the fire. Achilles sees us, to the feast invites, social we sit, and share the genial rites. We then explained the cause on which we came, urged you to arms, and found you fierce for fame. Your ancient father's generous precepts gave Peleus said only this, my son. Be brave, Menodius thus. Though great Achilles shine in strength superior and of race divine, yet cooler thoughts thy elder years attend, let thy just counsels aid, and rule thy friend. Thus spoke your father at Thessalia's court, words now forgot, though now of vast import. Try the utmost that a friend can say, such gentle force the fiercest minds obey, some favoring god Achilles, heart may move, though deaf to glory, he may yield to love. If some dire oracle his breast alarm, if aught from heaven withhold his saving arm, some beam of comfort yet on Greece may shine. If thou but lead the Myrmidonian line, clad in Achilles' arms, if thou appear, proud Troy may tremble and desist from war. Pressed by fresh forces, her o'erlabored train shall seek their walls, and Greece respire again. This touched his generous heart, and from the tent along the shore with hasty strides he went, soon as he came, where on the crowded strand, the public mart and courts of justice stand, where the tall fleet of great Ulysses lies, and altars to the guardian gods arise. There, sad, he met the brave Euaemon's son. Large painful drops from all his members run, an arrow's head yet rooted in his wound. The sable blood in circles marked the ground. As faintly reeling he confessed the smart, weak was his pace, but dauntless was his heart. Divine compassion touched Patroclus' breast, who, sighing, thus his bleeding friend addressed. Ah, hapless leaders of the Grecian host! Thus must ye perish on a barbarous coast. Is this your fate, to glut the dogs with gore, far from your friends, and from your native shore? Say, great Eurypylus, Shall Greece yet stand? Resists she yet the raging Hector's hand? Or are her heroes doomed to die with shame, and this the period of our wars and fame? Eurypylus replies, "No more, my friend, Greece is no more. This day her glories end, even to the ships victorious Troy pursues, her force increasing as her toil renews. Those chiefs that used her utmost rage to meet lie pierced with wounds and bleeding in the fleet. But thou, Patroclus, act a friendly part, lead to my ships and draw this deadly dart. With lukewarm water wash the gore away, with healing balms the raging smart allay, such as sage Chiron, sire of pharmacy, once taught Achilles and Achilles thee. Of two famed surgeons, Podalirius stands this hour surrounded by the Trojan bands, and great Machaon, wounded in his tent, now wants that succor which so oft he lent. To him the chief, what then remains to do? The event of things the gods alone can view. Charged by Achilles, great command I fly, and bear with haste the Pylian king's reply. But thy distress this instant claims relief, he said, and in his arms upheld the chief. The slaves their master's slow approach surveyed, and hides of oxen on the floor displayed. There, stretched at length, the wounded hero lay. Patroclus cut the forky steel away. Then in his hands a bitter root he bruised, the wound he washed, the styptic juice infused. The closing flesh that instant ceased to glow, the wound to torture, and the blood to flow. Hercules. Book 12. Argument. The battle at the Grecian wall. The Greeks having retired into their entrenchments, Hector attempts to force them. But it proving impossible to pass the ditch, Polydamas advises to quit their chariots and manage the attack on foot. The Trojans follow his counsel, and having divided their army into 5 bodies of foot, begin the assault. But upon the signal of an eagle with a serpent in his talons, which appeared on the left hand of the Trojans, Polydamas endeavors to withdraw them again. This Hector opposes and continues the attack, in which, after many actions, Sarpedon makes the first breach in the wall. Hector also, casting a stone of vast size, forces open one of the gates, and enters at the head of his troops, who victoriously pursue the Grecians even to their ships. While thus the hero's pious cares attend the cure and safety of his wounded friend, Trojans and Greeks with clashing shields engage, and mutual deaths are dealt with mutual rage. Nor long the trench or lofty walls oppose. With gods averse the ill-fated works arose, their powers neglected, and no victim slain. The walls were raised, the trenches sunk in vain. Without the gods, how short a period stands the proudest monument of mortal hands. This stood while Hector and Achilles raged, while sacred Troy the warring hosts engaged. But when her sons were slain, her city burned, and what survived of Greece to Greece returned. Then Neptune and Apollo shook the shore, then Ida's summits poured their watery store. Rhesus and Rhodius then unite their rills, Chersis roaring down the stony hills, Aesepus, Granicus with mingled force, and Xanthus foaming from his fruitful source, and gulfy Simwa, rolling to the main helmets and shields, and godlike heroes slain. These, turned by Phoebus from their wonted ways, deluged the rampire 9 continual days. The weight of waters saps the yielding wall, and to the sea the floating bulwarks fall. Incessant cataracts the thunder pours, and half the skies descend in sluicy showers. The god of ocean, marching stern before, with his huge trident wounds the trembling shore, vast stones and piles from their foundation heaves, and whelms the smoky ruin in the waves. Now smoothed with sand, and levelled by the flood, no fragment tells where once the wonder stood. In their old bounds the rivers roll again, shine, twixt the hills, or wander o'er the plain. But this the gods in later times perform, as yet the bulwark stood and braved the storm. The strokes yet echoed of contending powers, war thundered at the gates, and blood disdained the towers. Smote by the arm of Jove with dire dismay, close by their hollow ships the Grecians lay. Hector's approach in every wind they hear, and Hector's fury every moment fear. He, like a whirlwind, tossed the scattering throng, mingled the troops, and drove the field along. So, midst the dogs and hunters, daring bands, fierce of his might, a boar or lion stands armed foes around a dreadful circle form, and hissing javelins rain an iron storm. His powers untamed, their bold assault defy, and where he turns the rout disperse or die, he foams, he glares, he bounds against them all, and if he falls, his courage makes him fall. With equal rage encompassed Hector glows, exhorts his armies, and the trenches shows. The panting steeds impatient fury breathe, and snort and tremble at the gulf beneath. Just at the brink they neigh, and paw the ground, and the turf trembles, and the skies resound. Eager they viewed the prospect dark and deep, vast was the leap, and headlong hung the steep, the bottom bare, a formidable show, and bristled thick with sharpened stakes below. The foot alone this strong defense could force, and try the pass impervious to the horse. This saw Polydamas, who, wisely brave, restrained great Hector, and this counsel gave. O thou, bold leader of the Trojan bands! And you, confederate chiefs from foreign lands! What entrance here can cumbrous chariots find, the stakes beneath, the Grecian walls behind? No pass through those, without 1,000 wounds, no space for combat in yon narrow bounds. Proud of the favors mighty Jove has shown on certain dangers, we too rashly run, if tease, his will our haughty foes to tame. O may this instant end the Grecian name. Here, far from Argos, let their heroes fall, and one great day destroy and bury all. But should they turn, and here oppress our train, what hopes, what methods of retreat remain? Wedged in the trench, by our own troops confused, in one promiscuous carnage crushed and bruised, all Troy must perish, if their arms prevail, nor shall a Trojan live to tell the tale. Hear then, ye warriors, and obey with speed back from the trenches, let your steeds be led, then all alighting, wedged in firm array proceed on foot, and Hector lead the way. So Greece shall stoop before our conquering power, and this, if Jove consent, her fatal hour. Polydamas, advising Hector. This counsel pleased, the godlike Hector sprung swift from his seat, his clanging armor rung. The chief's example followed by his train, each quits his car, and issues on the plain, by orders strict the charioteers enjoined, compel the coursers to their ranks behind. The forces part in 5 distinguished bands, and all obey their several chiefs' commands. The best and bravest in the first conspire, pant for the fight, and threat the fleet with fire. Great Hector glorious in the van of these, Polydamas and brave Cebrians. Before the next the graceful Paris shines, and bold Alcathous and Agenor joins. The sons of Priam with the third appear, Deiphobus and Helenas the seer. In arms with these the mighty Achilles stood, who drew from Heotacus his noble blood, and whom Arispa's yellow coursers bore, the coursers fed on Sel's winding shore. Antenor's sons the 4th battalion guide, and great Aeneas, born on Fountful eyed. Divine Sarpedon the last band obeyed, whom Glaucus and Asteropaeus aid. Next him, the bravest, at their army's head, but he more brave than all the hosts he led. Now with compacted shields in close array, the moving legions speed their headlong way, already in their hopes they fire the fleet, and see the Grecians gasping at their feet. While every Trojan thus, and every aid, the advice of wise Polydamas obeyed. Achilles alone, confiding in his car, his vaunted coursers urged to meet the war. Unhappy hero! And advised in vain, those wheels returning ne'er shall mark the plain, no more those coursers with triumphant joy restore their master to the gates of Troy. Black death attends behind the Grecian wall, and great Idomeneus shall boast thy fall. Fierce to the left he drives, where from the plain the flying Grecians strove their ships to gain, swift through the wall their horse and chariots passed, the gates half open to receive the last. Thither, exulting in his force, he flies, his following host with clamors rend the skies, to plunge the Grecians headlong in the main, such their proud hopes, but all their hopes were vain. To guard the gates 2 mighty chiefs attend, who from the Lapiths' warlike race descend, this Polypoetes, great Perithous, heir, and that Leonteus, like the god of war. As 2 tall oaks before the wall they rise, their roots in earth, their heads amidst the skies, whose spreading arms with leafy honors crowned forbid the tempest and protect the ground. High on the hills appears their stately form, and their deep roots forever brave the storm. So graceful these, and so the shock they stand of raging Achilles and his furious band. Orestes, Acamas, in front appear, and Oenomaus and Thun close the rear. In vain their clamors shake the ambient fields, in vain around them beat their hollow shields. The fearless brothers on the Grecians call to guard their navies and defend the wall. Even when they saw Troy's sable troops impend, and Greece tumultuous from her towers descend, Forth from the portals rushed the intrepid pair, opposed their breasts, and stood themselves the war. So two wild boars spring furious from their den, roused with the cries of dogs and voice of men on every side the crackling trees they tear, and root the shrubs, and lay the forest bare, they gnash their tusks, with fire their eyeballs roll, till some wide wound lets out their mighty soul. Around their heads the whistling javelins sung, with sounding strokes their brazen targets rung, fierce was the fight, while yet the Grecian powers maintained the walls, and manned the lofty towers. To save their fleet their last efforts they try, and stones and darts in mingled tempests fly. As when sharp Boreas blows abroad, and brings the dreary winter on his frozen wings, beneath the low-hung clouds the sheets of snow descend, and whiten all the fields below, so fast the darts on either army pour, so down the ramparts rolls the rocky shower. Heavy and thick resound the battered shields, and the deaf echo rattles round the fields. With shame repulsed, with grief and fury driven, the frantic Achilles thus accuses heaven. In powers immortal who shall now believe? Can those two flatter, and can Jove deceive? What man could doubt but Troy's victorious power should humble Greece, and this her fatal hour? But like when wasps from hollow crannies drive to guard the entrance of their common hive, darkening the rock, while with unwearied wings they strike the assailants and infix their stings, a race determined that to death contend, so fierce these Greeks their last retreats defend. Gods, shall two warriors only guard their gates, repel an army, and defraud the fates? These empty accents mingled with the wind, nor moved great Jove's unalterable mind. To godlike Hector, and his matchless might was owed the glory of the destined fight. Like deeds of arms through all the forts were tried, and all the gates sustained an equal tide. Through the long walls the stony showers were heard, the blaze of flames, the flash of arms appeared. The spirit of a god my breast inspire, to raise each act to life, and sing with fire. While Greece unconquered kept alive the war, secure of death, confiding in despair and all her guardian gods, in deep dismay, with unassisting arms deplored the day. Even yet the dauntless Lapithae maintain the dreadful pass, and round them heap the slain. First Damasus, by Polypoetes, steel, pierced through his helmet's brazen visor, fell. The weapon drank the mingled brains and gore. The warrior sinks, tremendous now no more. Next Muse and Pylon yield their breath, nor less Leontius strews the field with death. First through the belt Hippomachus he gored, then sudden waved his unresisted sword. Antiphates, as through the ranks he broke, the falchion struck, and fate pursued the stroke. Iamnus, Orestes, Menon bled, and round him rose a monument of dead. Meantime, the bravest of the Trojan crew, bold Hector and Polydamas, pursue, fierce with impatience on the works to fall, and wrap in rolling flames the fleet and wall. These on the farther bank now stood and gazed, by heaven alarmed, by prodigies amazed. A signal omen stopped the passing host, their martial fury in their wonder lost. Jove's bird on sounding pinions beat the skies, a bleeding serpent of enormous size his talons trussed, alive and curling round. He stung the bird, whose throat received the wound. Mad with the smart, he drops the fatal prey, in airy circles wings his painful way, floats on the winds, and rends the heaven with cries. Amidst the host the fallen serpent lies. They pale with terror, mark its spires unrolled, and Jove's portent with beating hearts behold. Then first Polydamas the silence broke, long weighed the signal, and to Hector spoke. How oft, my brother, thy reproach I bear for words well meant, and sentiments sincere. True to those counsels which I judge the best, I tell the faithful dictates of my breast. To speak his thoughts is every freeman's right, in peace, in war, in council, and in fight, and all I move deferring to thy sway, but tends to raise that power which I obey. Then hear my words, nor may my words be vain. Seek not this day the Grecian ships to gain, for sure to warn us Jove his omen sent, and thus my mind explains its clear event. The victor eagle, whose sinister flight retards our host and fills our hearts with fright, dismissed his conquest in the middle skies, allowed to seize, but not possess the prize. Thus, though we gird with fires the Grecian fleet, though these proud bulwarks tumble at our feet, toils unforeseen and fiercer are decreed, more woes shall follow, and more heroes bleed. So bodes my soul, and bids me thus advise, for thus a skillful seer would read the skies. To him then Hector with disdain returned. Fierce as he spoke, his eyes with fury burned. Are these the faithful counsels of thy tongue? Thy will is partial, not thy reason wrong, or if the purpose of thy heart thou vent, sure heaven resumes the little sense it lent. What coward counsels would thy madness move against the will revealed of Jove? The leading sign, the irrevocable nod, and happy thunders of the favoring god, these shall I slight, and guide my wavering mind by wandering birds that flit with every wind. Ye vagrants of the sky, your wings extend, or where the suns arise or where descend, to right, to left, unheeded take your way, while I the dictates of high heaven obey. Without a sign his sword the brave man draws, and asks no omen but his country's cause. But why shouldst thou suspect the war's success? None fears it more, as none promotes it less. Though all our chiefs amidst yon ships expire, trust thy own cowardice to escape their fire. Troy and her sons may find a general grave, but thou canst live, for thou canst be a slave. Yet should the fears that wary mind suggests spread their cold poison through our soldiers' breasts, my javelin can revenge so base a part, and free the soul that quivers in thy heart. Furious he spoke, and, rushing to the wall, calls on his host. His host obey the call, with ardor follow where their leader flies, redoubling clamors thunder in the skies. Jove breathes a whirlwind from the hills of Ide, and drifts of dust the clouded navy hide. He fills the Greeks with terror and dismay, and gives great Hector the predestined day. Strong in themselves, but stronger in his aid, close to the works their rigid siege they laid. In vain the mounds and massy beams defend, while these they undermine, and those they rend. Upheave the piles that prop the solid wall, and heaps on heaps the smoky ruins fall. Greece on her ramparts stands the fierce alarms, the crowded bulwarks blaze with waving arms, shield touching shield, a long refulgent row, whence hissing darts, incessant, rain below. The bold Ajaces fly from tower to tower, and rouse, with flame divine, the Grecian power. The generous impulse every Greek obeys, threats urge the fearful, and the valiant praise. Fellows in arms, whose deeds are known to fame, and you, whose ardor hopes an equal name. Since not alike endued with force or art, behold a day when each may act his part. A day to fire the brave and warm the cold, to gain new glories or augment the old. Urge those who stand, and those who faint, excite. Drown Hector's vaunts in loud exhorts of fight. Conquest, not safety, fill the thoughts of all. Seek not your fleet, but sally from the wall, so Jove once more may drive their rooted train, and Troy lie trembling in her walls again. Their ardor kindles all the Grecian powers, and now the stones descend in heavier showers. As when high Jove his sharp artillery forms, and opes his cloudy magazine of storms, in winter's bleak uncomfortable reign, a snowy inundation hides the plain. He stills the winds, and bids the skies to sleep, then pours the silent tempest thick and deep. And first the mountain tops are covered o'er, then the green fields, and then the sandy shore, bent with the weight, the nodding woods are seen, and one bright waste hides all the works of men. The circling seas, alone absorbing all, drink the dissolving fleeces as they fall, so from each side increase the stony rain, and the white ruin rises o'er the plain. Thus godlike Hector and his troops contend to force the ramparts, and the gates to rend, nor Troy could conquer, nor the Greeks would yield, till great Sarpedon towered amid the field, for mighty Jove inspired with martial flame his matchless son, and urged him on to fame. In arms he shines, conspicuous from afar, and bears aloft his ample shield in air, within whose orb the thick bull hides were rolled, ponderous with brass, and bound with ductile gold. And while two pointed javelins arm his hands, majestic moves along, and leads his Lycian bands. So pressed with hunger, from the mountain's brow descends a lion on the flocks below. So stalks the lordly savage o'er the plain in sullen majesty and stern disdain. In vain loud mastiffs bay him from afar, and shepherds gall him with an iron war regardless. Furious, he pursues his way, he foams, he roars, he rends the panting prey. Resolved alike, divine Sarpedon glows with generous rage that drives him on the foes. He views the towers and meditates their fall, to sure destruction dooms the aspiring wall, then casting on his friend an ardent look, fired with the thirst of glory, thus he spoke. Why boast we, Glaucus? Our extended reign, where Xanthus, Streams enrich the Lycian plain, our numerous herds that range the fruitful field, and hills where vines their purple harvest yield, our foaming bowls with pure nectar crowned, our feasts enhanced with music's sprightly sound. Why on those shores are we with joy surveyed, admired as heroes, and as gods obeyed? Unless great acts superior merit prove, and vindicate the bounteous powers above. 'Tis ours, the dignity they give to grace, the first in valor, as the first in place, that when with wondering eyes our martial bands behold our deeds transcending our commands, such, they may cry, deserve the sovereign state, whom those that envy dare not imitate. Could all our care elude the gloomy grave, which claims no less the fearful and the brave, for lust of fame I should not vainly dare in fighting fields, nor urge thy soul to war. But since, alas, ignoble age must come, disease and death's inexorable doom, the life which others pay let us bestow, and give to fame what we to nature owe, brave though we fall, and honored if we live, or let us glory gain or glory give. He said, his words the listening chief inspire with equal warmth and rouse the warrior's fire. The troops pursue their leaders with delight, rush to the foe, and claim the promised fight. Menestheus from on high the storm beheld threatening the fort and blackening in the field. Around the walls he gazed, to view from far what aid appeared to avert the approaching war, and saw where Teucer with the Achilles stood, of fight insatiate, prodigal of blood. In vain he calls. The din of helms and shields rings to the skies, and echoes through the fields, the brazen hinges fly, the walls resound. Heaven trembles, roar the mountains, thunders all the ground. Then thus to Zeus, hence with speed, he said, and urge the bold Achilles to our aid, their strength, united, best may help to bear the bloody labors of the doubtful war. Hither the Lycian princes bend their course, the best and bravest of the hostile force. But if too fiercely there the foes contend, let Telamon, at least, our towers defend, and Teucer haste with his unerring bow to share the danger and repel the foe. Swift, at the word, the herald speeds along the lofty ramparts, through the martial throng, and finds the heroes bathed in sweat and gore, opposed in combat on the dusty shore. Ye valiant leaders of our warlike bands, your aid, said Zeus, Peleus' son demands your strength, united, best may help to bear the bloody labors of the doubtful war. Thither the Lycian princes bend their course, the best and bravest of the hostile force. But if too fiercely here the foes contend, at least let Telamon those towers defend, and Teucer haste with his unerring bow to share the danger and repel the foe. Straight to the fort great Ajax turned his care, and thus bespoke his brothers of the war. Now, valiant Lycomed, exert your might, and brave Iliad, prove your force in fight. To you I trust the fortune of the field, till by this arm the foe shall be repelled. That done, expect me to complete the day. Then with his sevenfold shield he strode away. With equal steps bold Teucer pressed the shore, whose fatal bow the strong Pandion bore. High on the walls appeared the Lycian powers, like some black tempest gathering round the towers. The Greeks, oppressed, their utmost force unite, prepared to labor in the unequal fight. The war renews, mixed shouts and groans arise, tumultuous clamor mounts, and thickens in the skies. Fierce Ajax first the advancing host invades, and sends the brave Epicles to the shades, Sarpedon's friend. Across the warrior's way, rent from the walls, a rocky fragment lay. In modern ages not the strongest swain could heave the unwieldy burden from the plain he poised, and swung it round. Then tossed on high, it flew with force, and labored up the sky, full on the Lycian's helmet thundering down. The ponderous ruin crushed his battered crown. As skillful divers from some airy steep headlong descend, and shoot into the deep, so falls Epicles. Then in groans expires, and murmuring to the shades the soul retires. While to the ramparts daring Glaucus drew, from Teucer's hand a winged arrow flew. The bearded shaft the destined passage found, and on his naked arm inflicts a wound. The chief, who feared some foe's insulting boast might stop the progress of his warlike host, concealed the wound, and, leaping from his height, retired reluctant from the unfinished fight. Divine Sarpedon with regret beheld disabled Glaucus slowly quit the field, his beating breast with generous ardor glows, he springs to fight, and flies upon the foes. Alcmaeon first was doomed his force to feel, deep in his breast, he plunged the pointed steel, Then from the yawning wound with fury tore the spear, pursued by gushing streams of gore. Down sinks the warrior with a thundering sound. His brazen armor rings against the ground. Swift to the battlement the victor flies, tugs with full force, and every nerve applies. It shakes. The ponderous stones disjointed yield, the rolling ruins smoke along the field. A mighty breach appears, the walls lie bare, and like a deluge, rushes in the war. At once bold Teucer draws the twanging bow, and Ajax sends his javelin at the foe. Fixed in his belt the feathered weapon stood, and through his buckler drove the trembling wood. But Jove was present in the dire debate, to shield his offspring and avert his fate. The prince gave back, not meditating flight, but urging vengeance and sever fight, then raised with hope and fired with glory's charms, his fainting squadrons to new fury warms. Oh, where, ye Lycians, is the strength you boast? Your former fame and ancient virtue lost. The breach lies open, but your chief in vain attempts alone the guarded pass to gain. Unite, and soon that hostile fleet shall fall. The force of powerful union conquers all. This just rebuke inflamed the Lycian crew. They join, they thicken, and the assault renew. Unmoved the embodied Greeks their fury dare, and fixed support the weight of all the war. Nor could the Greeks repel the Lycian powers, nor the bold Lycians force the Grecian towers. As on the confines of adjoining grounds, two stubborn swains with blows dispute their bounds, they tug, they sweat. But neither gain nor yield 1 foot, 1 inch of the contended field. Thus obstinate to death, they fight, they fall, nor these can keep, nor those can win the wall. Their manly breasts are pierced with many a wound, loud strokes are heard, and rattling arms resound. The copious slaughter covers all the shore, and the high ramparts drip with human gore. As when 2 scales are charged with doubtful loads, from side to side the trembling balance nods, while some laborious matron, just and poor, with nice exactness weighs her woolly store, till poised aloft, the resting beam suspends each equal weight. Nor this nor that descends, so stood the war till Hector's matchless might, with fates prevailing, the scale of fight. Fierce as a whirlwind up the walls he flies, and fires his host with loud repeated cries. Advance, ye Trojans! Lend your valiant hands, haste to the fleet, and toss the blazing brands. They hear, they run, and, gathering at his call, raise scaling engines and ascend the wall. Around the works a wood of glittering spears shoots up, and all the rising host appears. A ponderous stone bold Hector heaved to throw, pointed above, and rough and gross below. Not 2 strong men the enormous weight could raise, such men as live in these degenerate days. Yet this, as easy as a swain could bear the snowy fleece, he tossed and shook in air for Jove upheld, and lightened of its load the unwieldy rock, the labor of a god. Thus armed, before the folded gates he came, of massy substance and stupendous frame, with iron bars and brazen hinges strong on lofty beams of solid timber hung, then thundering through the planks with forceful sway drives the sharp rock. The solid beams give way, the folds are shattered. From the crackling door leap the resounding bars, the flying hinges roar. Now rushing in, the furious chief appears, gloomy as night, and shakes 2 shining spears. A dreadful gleam from his bright armor came, and from his eyeballs flashed the living flame. He moves a god, resistless in his course, and seems a match for more than mortal force. Then pouring after, through the gaping space, a tide of Trojans flows and fills the place. The Greeks behold, they tremble and they fly. The shore is heaped with death, and tumult rends the sky. Greek Altar. Book 13. Argument.